The African tribe, the Maasai, greet each other in a very traditional way. They say, Cesare Ingare, which means, and how are the children? They don't ask, how are you doing or how is your day? They ask about what is most important, our children. Imagine if we started every conversation with how our children are doing. In fact, the best reflection of who we are as a society is how our children are faring. Today, I'm going to talk with you about the how, what, where, and how of early childhood education. When children have access to early childhood education, what we call ECE, they thrive cognitively, emotionally, socially. Families and caregivers have a place to turn for stability and support. The Cincinnati Preschool Promise is built on the idea that every child has a right to a high-quality education. It is not a privilege, but it is a necessity. Starting with a comprehensive landscape assessment sponsored by Procter & Gamble in 1988, we took a close look at what our community needed. It is not just a program, it is not just a project, it is a promise. It is a promise that we made to every child in this community. It is built on innovation. Innovation is at the core at developing community-based strategies that enhance the traditional education models in ways that have had a tenfold impact. The community came together to bring this promise to us. Stakeholders were everywhere: children, families, small business owners, entrepreneurs, pediatricians, healthcare organizations, community organizations, educators, and of course, taxpayers. Everybody's motivation was different. Some wanted to do what they thought was the right thing for children. Some wanted to prepare the workforce in the next generation. Some wanted to help their current employers overcome the obstacles to childcare, like the high cost and the limited availability. Others wanted to make sure teachers were properly compensated. But just about everybody wanted to make sure that we had safe and supportive learning spaces for our children. Those are just some of the reasons a structured early initiative like the Cincinnati Preschool Promise is so important. Rather than focus on helping adults that have been broken by the system heal, I now have the pleasure of helping build the joyful, smart, happy adults of the future. We should be proud in Cincinnati that we're one of 53 communities across the country who came together to say, we're going to do more. We're going to show up differently. We're going to do better. We're going to prioritize ECE, prioritize it with our vote, prioritize it with our dollars, and prioritize it with what matters most, our hearts. So let's consider, now that it's been almost 10 years since we started the Cincinnati Preschool Promise, what makes this promise so important? What's the difference that early childhood education can make, and what matters? First, the science. The science of child development tells us that 90% of a child's brain develops in the first 5 years. Though brains are built over time, it happens quickly in those first 5 years. Healthy development requires stable, consistent, positive interactions with adults. We only get one chance to lay the foundation for a child to be successful in school, in society, and in life. Quality matters. Quality in early education is so important because it creates an environment that is not focused on a test score, not focused on one way of working, but focused on making sure a child is developmentally on track for what is best for them. Making progress physically, socially, emotionally, academically, cognitively, those are all pieces of the high-quality puzzle that matters. If we can't help a child get through the day without kicking, punching, screaming, and yelling at the wrong times, then it really doesn't make a difference if they know how to spell cat or can tell the difference between blue and green. Over 50 years of Head Start has taught us that when we pay attention to the whole child and the whole family, the whole community benefits. And the whole community made a commitment. They made a commitment that we are going to invest now for payoffs that are going to come in the future. What we do now has a direct impact beyond the early years. For children who have that high-quality early childhood education, they show up to kindergarten ready. They get higher ACT scores. They earn more credits while they're in high school. They're better able to get jobs when they graduate, and they graduate on time. We also made a commitment not only to invest in now for the future, but that will create an ECE ecosystem that was rooted in equity. Equity is at the core of quality education. What we know is families with the most limited economic means benefit the most from high-quality preschool. And in our community, socioeconomic status is a proxy for race. Since 2018, what we have learned is that children that benefit most from the expansion of preschool are Black children and Hispanic children. They're showing up ready. They're outperforming their peers that did not have ECE experiencing at rates that are statistically significant. In the United States, 47% of parents and caregivers have to spend more than $18,000 a year to make sure that they can have early education. Most parents, most families simply just cannot afford it. In Ohio, that limited affordability and accessibility means that 44% of working parents lose focus, show up late, miss time. It means that 61% of mothers in Ohio who are only working part-time said they would be more than happy and willing to work full-time if there was a safe space to care for their children. Overall, every year, it cost Ohio almost $5.48 billion in lost tax revenue and lost employer earnings because we just can't figure out yet how to make sure we can make it accessible for everyone. And while we could focus on the loss, what we should focus on is the gain. For every dollar invested in early education, there is a return of between $9 and $15. We know that ECE sites are important to neighborhoods because they infuse dollars as property owners, as purchasers, as employers, as real estate vendors. All of those things are important to the ecosystem and a community. We also know that community is important, and what we learned during the pandemic is that they're a source for building relationships, for building connections. The person that you trust most of the day with your child is also the person that you turn to when you need advice, when you're looking for a job, when you're trying to sharpen your computer skills, when you're experiencing food insecurity. When you need someone to help your family win, the ECE site is where you're going to turn. And we're lucky that the communities made the commitment to do that. What we've also learned and what we should talk about is what early childhood education is not. It is not an opportunity to polarize things. It is not an opportunity to focus on controversies or terminology and distinctions that don't make a difference. The struggle comes when there are unnecessary comparisons and compartmentalization that don't prioritize the well-being of our children. Early childhood education is not the difference between babysitting, childcare, education. It is not the difference between playing and learning. It is not home-based sites versus centers. It is not public schools versus private schools. It is not a system that should be driven solely by the source of funding or adopt this notion that there is a resource scarcity. There is more than enough for our children. It should also not be considered an individual family burden instead of a collective public responsibility and good. Marian Wright Edelman said to us, investing in children is not a national luxury or a national choice. It is a national necessity. If the foundation of your house is crumbling, you don't say, I can't afford to fix it, while building astronomically more expensive fences to keep the enemies out. The question is not, are we going to pay? The question is, are we going to pay up front now, or are we going to pay even more in the future? Let's think about what we've learned over the last 10 years by doing what is necessary and making early childhood education available. First, we've learned that investments work. investment of time, investment of expertise, investment of resources has worked to accelerate the growth of the system in ways beyond what we could ever hope for, and in ways that continue to deliver meaningful outcomes for children and families. Improvement is possible. We have seen that over 80% of the educators and childcare sites in our community have earned the mark of high quality. Families matter. As a child's first teacher, it's a hard job for a parent and a family to find a preschool, get your child to preschool on time, come consistently, and make sure that they follow through. It doesn't matter so much what your family looks like or what your family is composed of. What matters is they work together. 50% of our Cincinnati preschool promise families are struggling and living at 100% below the federal poverty level, but they are making it work for their children. We've also learned that educators are essential. How we teach, evidence-based curriculum, those positive interactions, it truly requires a match of a unique honed skill set with a passion. But we can't forget that it is also a job that will require fair and adequate compensation if people are going to continue to do it. And what is also not optional is looking at early childhood education with a lens of equity. And by equity, I mean making sure children and families get what they need, when they need it, the way they need it, and how they need it. Not the way I think they should have it, but the way that they need it. That means a mixed delivery model. That means family childcare sites, friends, family, and neighbor, public preschools, community preschools. All of those things are important. While we have to pay attention to each one, an equity lens helps us prioritize which ones will bring us the best outcomes. And most importantly, what we have learned is that we can get it right. Early childhood education can be affordable, it can be accessible, it can be available, and when it is, you will not believe the outcomes. Here's what we have accomplished together. In just about the last 10 years, the Cincinnati Preschool Promise has provided 12,000 preschoolers with direct tuition support, allowing them to attend a high-quality preschool. 90% of those parents have told us that that would not have been possible but for the support of the Preschool Promise. Today in Cincinnati, 43% of our youngest learners are enrolled in a high-quality preschool. When we started, that was only 19%. That's an incredible, incredible gain in a short amount of time. And what we know is that those preschoolers, on validated assessments year after year, 64 to 78% of them show up ready to learn compared to 20 to 22% of their peers. The difference makes an incredible impact on our community. We know that we have a teacher retention rate of 80% for those that receive Teacher Promise grants. We know that we have worked collectively, even throughout the pandemic, to reach the capacity for more than 3,172 high-quality seats in that community. So what? What that means is that if we realize this capacity, 70% of our children have a safe learning environment where they can go every day. That's starting to look a little bit more like universal preschool. We know and are proud of our attendance rate being at 88% because consistent attendance matters at every level of education, and it's really important. And again, the money. $67.7 million public dollars have been directly invested in our children's future. I hope these statistics excite you. I hope the story is exciting to you and it's inspiring to you because it's inspiring to me, and it makes me think, what if? What if we look at what could we do if we take these learnings and apply them to what's going to happen in the next 10 years? What if there was universal preschool so every child got that strong foundation? What if every child was well prepared so that they were on track at 3rd grade, on track at 8th grade, and graduated on time? How much would we save in lost opportunities and actual dollars that are now invested in remediation? What if half of our families didn't have to spend 72% of their already low income to make sure that they had childcare? What if more than half of Ohio mothers could reach their career potential because they could go to work knowing that their child was safe and well cared for? What if we welcome the next generation of educators with fair compensation and benefits so they didn't have to make the choice between answering their calling to educate children or choosing another profession that will at least provide the basics of food and shelter for their own family? Because early education doesn't always do that. What if we had a focus on early education that said in every neighborhood there was an early learning network that made sure there were enough seats at preschools, at centers, at daycares, so that every child had a space in a way that they needed, and that it didn't exclude children that were different, behaviorally different, different because of their abilities, different because of their intellectual capacity, or different because their parents didn't follow a traditional 9-to-5 schedule that had to fit in the box of how we used to define education. What if? What if we all could come together to make that difference happen? If you take anything with you today, know that you can be the part of the what if. That in 2035, if we said, how are we all going to come together? ECE is not just about parents and about teachers. We need you. We need everybody to join on the Promise team. No matter your major, no matter your profession, there is a place for you. As architects, you can help us design safe and inspiring learning spaces. As engineers, you can design systems that help us move from ideation to implementation. As musicians, you can help children develop a love of music while they're learning. As volunteers, as entrepreneurs, as educators, you can own, operate, or support an early education site. As families, as parents, as caregivers, you can make sure that we know what your children need and hold us accountable for making sure they give it. And most importantly, as taxpayers, you can continue to pay your taxes so that that strategic public financing that makes early education possible can continue to expand. There is a place for you to bring your time, to bring your treasure, to bring your talent, whatever that is. What is most important is that you make a commitment to our children. What is most important is that you are committed to doing what we know works, what has the greatest impact, what makes the most difference, that you are a community champion on the Cincinnati Preschool Promise team, and that you are always asking, and how are the children? Thank you.